立法會主席。
The President. Any members who would like to speak? Elizabeth Quat. Thank you, President. I speak to support Eunice Young's motion to censure Dr. Chang for misbehavior and against Mr. Ray Chan's motion of nothing further action on Ms. Young's motion. I've heard a lot of members' remarks, and for those who support Mr. Chan's motion, what grounds do they have to? Because the opposition camp always want to investigate everything. So on what grounds would they want to turn down investigation? However, sitting through the whole morning, I didn't notice there any convincing grounds. As on 1st of July, the memory is still fresh of what happened that day in electrical complex. That day was a very sad and a dark day in electrical history. In the afternoon, we see people storming into the electrical complex, smashing the glass panels, and stormed into the complex and ransacking and vandalizing. As of today, even though we can sit here, however, the complex yet to be fully rehabilitated, especially the glass panels have not to be fully replaced. And we can see the scale of destruction inside of the complex. There's some of the security facilities and communication facilities have been gutted by the rioters with their wires taken out. So that's a grave matter. And also, on that day, this chamber, we can see how bad because we can see all the laptops and the panels and the equipment on the tables have been smashed, and on the wall behind the president, and an emblem have been desecrated with pro-independence graffiti. So these images are still fresh and set my blood boiling. What made more infuriating is that some electrical members were in the electrical complex, in particular, like Ms. Young set out in the schedule of promotion, that on that day, it was seen that when the red alert have taken effect, that Dr. Chang have conducted live streaming where he was walking through the audience on the internal layout and the facilities, providing a guided tour for the rioters. We had enough suspicion that we're assisting the protesters to evade police and to conduct vandalism. The Ms. Young also mentioned that Dr. Chang, as a electrical member, assisted an unauthorized person and for those are the black-clad and masked rioters to enter and vandalize the electrical complex. No respect for the council and failing the public expectations of electrical member and tarnishing its reputation. Thus, they constitute misbehavior. Mr. Ray objection and should not be investigated, and those in the opposition camp claim that it should not be investigated. So what grounds do they have? So Mr. Chu have been very, very frank. There's no need investigation, but you can see in the live streaming what have been done. And a few members also cited that they were at that scene and also conduct lots of interviews. As the electrical member, when you saw the electrical complex have been ransacked by the rioters, especially in this chamber, that for the SARG emblem being defaced, that they chose not to stop them or speak out. Besides providing guided tours and like this showing the security room and so on, they have been taking interviews by different media, mostly foreign media, to gain exposure. Those that see their a heroic moment. Have they ever stopped the rioters from vandalizing Let's Go? No. Have they stopped the emblem from being destroyed? No. They're most interested is to gain exposure, sit down for interviews to gain that halo. They see that by smashing up the Let's Go was the rightful thing to do. So may I ask, why should they serve as Let's Go members? And I heard from Ted Hui, so this motion by Ms. Yung was abuse of the procedures. They are probably more adept in abusing the procedures. Today we are having this different motion debates. For yesterday, we moved a motion to relieve Ms. Ten Chen and Mr. Xiu Ka-shun of the duties which they objected. We have strictly followed the RoP, and yet they have shielded them and object to these two motions, and yet they come up with their own motions to condemn other members. For example, targeting Dr. Ho. There were two motions, and Dr. Ho claimed that there's nothing to be afraid of. I can stand the test. Bring it on. So no need to debate. On the other hand, the opposition camp members always blindly support their own. And for whatever motion they support or object, all along the one central principle, they will support achieving justice by breaking the law, and they claim that the people was forced to revolt and to stop violence with force and the institutional violence to justify the ransacking. So that's been central thinking. If you don't listen to me, you refuse to take in my advice or follow my rules, therefore we would resort to an authorized use of force to express their views. Those in this chamber, they can conduct vandalism, and it's even alright to bring people along and also encourage others to vandalize. That's never condemn violence and will not distance themselves from violence, to encourage people to achieving justice by breaking the law. That's what they've been doing. They see that it's all right to smash up the Let's Go, like Mr. Ted Hui. These are their objects. For such line of thinking and this kind of incitement to violence and condoning violence and glorifying the violence and make it sound heroic and have been sensationalizing in the society. So the society had a distorted value system. Like they said, and to express their own views that can result in any kind of violence, from smashing objects to throwing people with bricks. They will not denounce and distance themselves from violence. So these are the opposition camp members bring their own kind of values to the society. Last week, I paid a visit to the Mr. Lee who was set alight. He said that he woke up and yet he's still in the critical phase. His life was still at risk. So all the violence we incited to let the innocent bystanders be subject to abuse. Ms. Kwok, please return to this debate. I failed to hear from the opposition camp of any valid grounds of not conducting investigation. We have reasonable grounds to suspect Dr. Chen Chong-tai of his act on Let's Go that day. Whether he is convicted as a Let's Go member, we have led a group of rioters to conduct a large-scale vandalism. That itself is a serious matter. This is misbehavior, also an issue of ethics. I don't see I disagree with the opposition camp members who claim there's nothing to investigate. While you want to investigate someone for shaking hands, while is on the live streaming by himself, by leading a group of rioters, however, they should not be investigated. Well, this is not a matter of double standard, but also in blindly supporting. And Mr. Ted Hui claimed he wanted to know what the public see of this. Well, for the public, it's referring to the general public or the rioters. The rioters wouldn't see the problem since they had a hand in this. However, not to offend the rioters or not to offend your supporters, then you decide not to burn your conscience and decide to espouse violence and to stand against justice. So that's their logic. So they want to investigate everything on the opposing camp. Whatever happened on your own side should not be investigated. Thus, I'm unable to agree to Mr. Chan's motion. I see that as well as supporting. And next, we will vote on the Dr. Ho's motion to censure Lam Chuk-ting. I believe they will boldly supporting and also object to the investigation. That's quite ironic because Lam Chuk-ting was the one who wanted to investigate everything. When it comes to himself, then he sees himself beyond investigation. Is Mr. Lam want to achieve justice? I hope that he should appeal to their own camp in the opposition not to obstruct the investigate himself. Mr. Lam Chuk-ting.
Mr. President, well, Honorable Eunice Yung moved a motion to censure Dr. Cheng Chung-tai. Honorable Ray Chan would not want this motion to continue, so he would like to have no further action to be taken. Strangely, my name was mentioned many times in this debate, including Dr. Elizabeth Kwok, who's on her way out of the chamber. Well, let me talk about the principles concerning the threshold of carrying out an investigation in the eyes of the pro-establishment camp. Well, they've been saying that if you are in the right, then you don't need to have anything to worry and you can stand the test. Well, Junius Ho was not afraid of being investigated, and so the pro-establishment camp would not object to the motion to set up an investigation committee. Well, the loyalists have said that that's the reason why they didn't object to this motion against Dr. Junius Ho. Now, in the context of Ray Chan's motion, I think what they are saying is that irrespective of how unjustified the allegation is, as long as one is forthright, then there's no need to be afraid of any investigation. It sounds right, but is it really the case? Say, for example, if today somebody goes out of his mind and accuses Stephen Ho of being the mastermind of a smuggling syndicate. I'm citing this as an example. So can somebody then move a motion to say that we need to look into the matter, whether he's the mastermind of a smuggling syndicate? Can he then say that it's fine, I don't mind, I can stand the test? What about the impact on our resources? Well, Mr. Stephen Ho said that we've already wasted a lot of time, and therefore yesterday he said that he would not want to obstruct the motion. Now, if you want to set up an investigation committee, it means that we are going to have to use more resources of the LegCo. It will be wastage. So if you start to adopt such a threshold, it is going to be dangerous because you'll be unlimited and you can embark on personal attacks while using public resources, the time of the LegCo, etc. And you can still dwell on smearing tactics and unjustified allegations. Now, the pro-establishment camp said that Dr. Cheng Chung-tai took others to come into the LegCo complex to vandalize the complex, eroding the dignity of the LegCo. If you talk about the dignity of the LegCo, if you allow motions that have no justification at all, and they are purely fabrication, would that not be erosion of our dignity? Say, for example, if we have some visitors from a foreign parliament, and if they are here to watch our proceedings, and then if we are having a motion to look into the allegation that Stephen Ho is the mastermind of smuggling syndicate. They ask us if we have justifications. If we say that no, we don't, but it doesn't matter. I don't think you can say that this is not being afraid because you can stand the test. Rather, it is a waste of resources for the sake of attacking others. Of course, somebody have said that the pro-establishment camp didn't want to support Julius Ho, and therefore they didn't rise to speak. It would be impossible for them to say that Julius Ho has done a good job. Just now, someone said that by purely shaking hands, Julius Ho has become the target of our motion. Is it just because of that? KK Kwok's speech was clear. On the eve of July 21st and on the 15th of July, Julius Ho had a live cast on his Facebook saying that it's a military action. He welcomed others to go to Yuen Long, saying that there should be a heavy presence. Please come back to the debate. I'm going to respond to Julius Ho's points. I will be finishing soon. He said that they would be welcome, and he had confidence, and they will beaten, and they will fail, and he would not be like Hao Zhiqiang, who appeared as a goodwill or hospitality ambassador. Now, Mr. President, let's examine the threshold. It is really shocking, 1.4 billion people. So they have no ground at all, and they could still put in a motion to accuse a member. Of course, I will elaborate on this point when we embark on the following debate. Now, let me accept and adopt their arguments for the time being. Now, they have always been saying that they have nothing to fear and they can stand the test. But what about previous motions, like the ICAC saga, the police brutality, the CE's direction of duty, the Sha Tin Central line of the MTR projects? They have objected to all such motions. And on what grounds? They said that the electrical has become the battleground of politics. You can never dig up the truth. Such efforts would only waste our time and resources, so none of the investigations should be carried out. It seems that they have changed their mind, or is it that they have changed their brains? Well, following the same logic, perhaps I should revive all the previous motions. Now, if you say that Simon Pei can stand the test, then you don't need to worry. And for the police, if they have been using force lawfully, then they should not have anything to fear for. And then for Carrie Lam, why are you still supporting her? What's wrong with our motion to have an investigation into her work? Mr. President, for Dr. Jiang Chongtai, on the 1st of July, he carried out a live streaming on the Facebook in relation to the electrical complex. Elizabeth Kwok said that he was interviewed and he showed around the different venues. Now, it is said that it's tantamount to assisting the protesters to vandalize the electrical complex. Well, the video footage of the TV stations, indeed, he was present and he was conducting live streams. But can we then jump to the conclusion that he was helping others to vandalize? Mr. President, on that particular day, together with a few Democratic camp members, we came in and we even entered this complex and the chamber. It was broadcast live, and we were persuading the people to leave. According to the logic of the loyalists, then they could also jump to the conclusion that the red alert was on. Why would we want to stay? there's tantamount to assisting the rioters, then all of us will become culpable. What about reporters? There were a lot of reporters there, and they were covering the story. Is it the same? Or is it of the same nature? And were they also assisting the rioters or the protesters to vandalize the complex? I think they must adhere to the same threshold. They mustn't appear to be self-righteous while moving the goalposts and try to take the opportunity to talk about stopping violence, restoring calm. The slogan has been shouted for 6 months. Can the shouting of slogans on its own stop the problem? I think we blame the administration and the supporters. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak? Ms. Eunice Yung. I speak to oppose to Mr. Ray Chen's motion that no further action be taken on the motion moved by me. I have heard different members. They talk about the wordings in my motion. That is in relation to the motion to censure Dr. Chang. The wording itself is very clear and certain. It's directly about his misbehavior, and I move a motion to censure him. If Pan-Democrats think that he hasn't done anything that constitute misbehavior, then wait for the investigation before your decision. And if you think that the evidence is scanty, well, then watch the live stream. Some others said that they have not watched the live streams, but they talk about how weak my arguments are. If they have not watched the live streams, then how would they be able to speak based on basis? Well, he's already in LegCo. There is a live stream. There is no need for investigation. Then you watch the live stream to see if Dr. Chang Chung-tai has misbehaved. And then the members of the public may comment on it, and legislators may make a decision. Dr. K.K. Kwok targeted me and my job, saying that, well, I might be a lawyer, but I did not know, and I passed judgment before there was a court hearing. Is it the case that there is no need to have any investigation committee? And the Pan-Democrats decide that it's nothing. He's innocent. Other Pan-Democrats have done something similar. What's wrong with doing a live stream? Then aren't you doing exactly what you said I'm doing? Jumping to conclusions before there is any investigation? You said there is no need to have any investigation because we know, because the public know. Just now, Mr. Lam Cheuk-ting talked about why we needed to stop violence. Why was there violence? I was talking about the source of the violence on the 1st of July. Dr. Chang Chung-tai caused? Well, I did not say in my motion that he was leading anyone. He said assisted protesters to avoid police detection. So if you're only targeting statements made by others, focus on the factual statements, don't make things up. This is about Dr. Chang Chung-tai's behavior. It constitutes misbehavior. It talks about the responsibilities of a legislator. Ao Nok-kin said he was in the antechamber trying to protect some historic items. I don't want to second guess his intention. I'm not imputing a motive that he was actually saying don't damage things here, go somewhere else. I am not doing that. I move this motion to find out why his misbehavior was the source of the violence that is seen in the electrical complex, whether his behavior has emboldened protesters. The electrical has the rule of law. Do we allow such behavior, thereby tarnishing Hong Kong's image? Do we accept such behavior that a legislator stormed the electrical and took the lead to encourage violence? And someone asked, what is the meaning of a red alert? Well, as I've said, it means that all people in the complex are required to leave immediately. If there is an investigation committee, then Dr. Chang can explain what he was doing here. He could explain whether there was any need to do a live stream, whether he was a reporter, whether he is a scholar. I have not seen Dr. Chang here. He wasn't here the whole morning. And why should the Pan-Democrats blindly defend him? Because he hasn't done it himself and he did not ask for support. Is it the case that just you blindly defending him? We can see the fact. The clip is still on the internet, then we should watch it to decide whether there is any misbehavior. I ask members to support my motion and oppose to that of Mr. Chan's.
Any members would like to speak? If no members would like to speak, and can we have Ray Chan to reply? Then the debate will come to a close. Well, in accordance to RoP 49B bracket 2A, in moving that no further action to be taken on Ms. Yong's censure motion. I move this motion from the power conferred by RoP, thus permitted by the President. So when some members raise a fundamental question, so I would ask you if is moved by member, let's investigate. And well, if you see yourself outright, what are you afraid of? Then, in accordance to you, for those in functional constituency have the majority and also have a majority and for the GC, you would just modify the RoP. You just delete the 49B bracket 2A. Then there will be no more dispute and then no more debate. If you don't want to put up your hand accusing anyone of misbehavior, then we will set up a investigation committee. We can't let this happen. Someone claimed that by not supporting Dr. Junior's whole of not taking further action to be taken on Dr. Ho's censure motion is not to waste this chamber's time. And Mr. Lam had explained. What do you mean by saving time or wasting time? Well, the point in Section 2A under 49B of RoP is to have an additional threshold. If any member sees a member committing misbehavior, they will not set up an investigation committee right away, but someone, by way of moving a motion of not taking further action, so allow the chamber to debate once before we're taking over the next step. If you're not wasting this council's time, then you can choose not to speak at all. you can just vote down this motion. Well, in theory, if you have a majority in both GC and FC, then you just vote it down right away. If any member moved that a motion and another member has misbehavior, whether for the secretariat's time or the space or the member's time, would that constitute a bigger waste? Or today, I'm using the power conferred by the RoP in moving this debate, hopefully for those with thin grounds for them to reconsider whether we should support them.
Before we decide on setting up a committee, I think that is more reasonable if we follow your logic. Now, whenever we have a motion seconded by 3 members at this time, the seconders are Mrs. Regina Ip, Mr. Wong Ting Kong, and Mr. Poon Shiu Ping. That means you will for sure agree to such a motion when it is put in front of you with no regard to justifications. Now we have another motion on Mr. Lam Chak Ting, and he's very angry, not just furious with the mover, but the seconder. Now, if according to your justification, if you are right, there is nothing to fear, and I will sign any motion to censure another member. Should that be the case? Of course not. And I'd like to respond to Ms. Alice Mack's question whether we have been discussing with Dr. Zhang Chong-tai and whether my motion will do him harm or good. Of course, as a matter of courtesy, I have consulted him. Now, if he had opposed to my motion fiercely, using the same logic as Mr. Junius Ho, claiming that if you have done nothing wrong, there is nothing to fear. Of course, Dr. Zhang Chong-tai has not objected to my moving this motion, and I do this not just to help him. Rather, when the grounds are thin, when it comes to a motion to censure another member, we cannot just sign to show our support blindly. Now, if I do not move a motion under RoP 49B 2A, that would mean that I do not find any problem with this motion. Of course, even if now for I still don't know the real reason for this motion not being moved yesterday. Perhaps Mr. Junius Ho can tell us that he himself asked his members of his camp not to move such a motion because there's nothing to fear, he has done nothing wrong. But this is not the story I've heard. I'm afraid the story will never, the truth will never be known. Is it because they don't have enough votes to get motion passed, or perhaps members do not want to spend 15 minutes speaking in support of Mr. Ho? All right, I've digressed. Now, in order to rebut to query your logic, I'd like to quote the following case. Must it be the case that whenever a motion to censure a member is moved, then if the person has no fear of being investigated, then a motion 49B 2A should not be moved? Now, I'd like to quote the case of Mr. Holden Chow. Indeed, the pro-establishment camp did not move a motion under RoP 49B 2A. That is, they did not take any action to stop further action being taken against Mr. Chow, because the threshold was very high. Back then, pandemics with majority of the GC group, and there must be majority support from both GC and FC groups. And perhaps the thinking behind the pro-establishment camp was since they did not have enough votes anyway, perhaps they don't mind setting up a committee to investigate the matter for 30 years. Now, for 30 weeks. All right, and then in last year, there was a motion moved by Ms. Claudia Mo to censure another member, and then Chen Hek-kang moved a motion under 48B2A to the effect that no further action shall be taken on the motion moved under this rule. And do you remember what the pro-establishment member said in the debate? Because by then, the pro-establishment camp had a majority in both the FC and GC sectors, and that's why the motion moved by Mr. Gary Chen was carried to take no further action on the motion moved by Ms. Claudia Mo. Perhaps I can ask Mr. Gary Chen, how come you didn't move a similar motion yesterday? Perhaps he can say that Junius Ho didn't ask me, or he is not from my camp. Now, if you really think that it is a waste of time, you should have moved a similar motion yesterday. Because if you were here, you actually had a majority in both the GC and FC divisions, and then the file would be closed. Then we could have saved a lot of resources and time. Or I have to respond to Dr. Priscilla Leung's remarks directly. But if you want to clarify, please wait till I finish. Otherwise I'm afraid you will have to clarify after each sentence I utter. Now, Priscilla Leung was saying that we were contradicting ourselves. And she asked whether we've adopted the same standard in dealing with matters of the same nature, and whether we're contradicting ourselves. Well, of course. When we had Mr. Junius Ho's motion, no one from your camp moved a motion under 48.9B2A. And you might say that we've only half a year of the term left. Even if we set up a committee, we cannot have the whole thing clarified. Now, if I use this logic to support the motion against Mr. Junius Ho and oppose this one by Ms. Hon Yung Hoi-Yan, then I will be contradicting myself. The fact is, we have two committees waiting to be activated in relation to Mr. Junius Ho's conduct. And in the last 2 days, many members, including those from the pan-democratic camp, might not have made our arguments very clear to let the public understand, because all these motions are made under Article 79 of the Basic Law. But in fact, in Article 79 of the Basic Law, there are several levels. Now, if a member has been absent from meetings for 3 consecutive months, then there is no arguing. The president can exercise his power to disqualify this member. And then yesterday, there were 2 motions related to Ms. Tanya Chen and Mr. Shu Ka-chun. If a member is convicted and sentenced to imprisonment for 1 month or more, then a motion passed by 2/3 of the members of the LC present can disqualify him. Now, it's not about whether you support the Basic Law or not. Rather, there is a threshold in the Basic Law. First, the person has to be convicted and sentenced to imprisonment for 1 month or more, and then the motion has to be passed by 2/3 of the members of the LC present. So, both limbs have to be satisfied. And now, Ms. Yung's motion is a member is censured for misbehavior or breach of oath by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the electoral present. Now, the threshold is much lower, so long as the mover thinks that the member has misbehaved. There is no question of breaching the principle of presumption of innocence. Now, if you use this logic, then you should not have supported Ms. Claudia Mo's motion, because that is really dependent on our judgment of whether a member has misbehaved. However, Article 79(7) is very loose. So long as you feel that a member has misbehaved or breached our oath, then the threshold is reached. I can even say that I'm of the view that by supporting the anti-facial covering regulation, you have breached the basic law or our constitution. Then I can move a motion under Article 79(7) of the Basic Law. Now I return to the wording of Ms. Yung Hoi-Yan's motion. The logic she used was very ridiculous. When a person was present and the fact that he did not stop that from happening, does that mean that he condoned such happening? I think it was the police who condoned what happened on that day because the police were present. And she said that to show respect for the council building, we must support this motion. Dr. Priscilla Leung, I think you should invoke a motion under LPMP to investigate into the storming of the electrical building. But of course, the wording must be neutrally drafted. I, in fact, wonder how come the police were absent. So we cannot just say that we follow Ms. Yung Hoi-Yan's logic. We must support this motion to investigate the behavior of Zheng Chong-tai. And when a member advised or urged the members to go, you can accuse him of helping the protesters to escape. I think the whole motion is purely Ms. Yung's imagination or interpretation. Now, my motion disagrees to Ms. Yung Hoi-Yan's imagination and also interpretation. So please support my motion so that we can call stop to this motion.
Mr. Chen Ji-chin has referred to my speech repeatedly. First, he said I had that they were self-contradictory. He misunderstood me. I was talking about the speech of Dr. Kwok Ka-Kay. He kept saying that there is a presumption of innocence, etc. And he was using the same arguments to support the case, which is contrary to what his position was when we were talking about Mr. Junius Ho's the motions against Mr. Junius Ho. Please don't speak at your seats if you don't like what you hear. Secondly, he said that my speech was solely on the basis of respecting the Legislative Council. He has twisted my words. Members, if you continue to speak in your seat, I would say I have already warned you. I will now give you the last warning. I was talking about the destruction of electrical complex and the seriousness of this, not what he understood my speech to be. He never speak with such a timid manner. The debate did you speak in your seat? I ask all members not to speak in their seats. Otherwise, the debate will not be able to continue. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, I noted that in dealing with Dr. Percy Leung's speech, I would say you adopted double standard. It was not a point of order. She was just speaking. She was just speaking to rebut another member. Are you favoring a member of your own party? I reminded Dr. Priscilla Leung that she could only speak to elucidate or clarify her points. That's what I said at the very outset. I asked her to stop right after that, and then she made a second point. I had to hear her out in order to see whether there's another point of order. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, this morning I already gave you one warning. If you all continue to speak in your seats, the meeting cannot proceed. What's the point of order? President, I was talking about your ludicrous judgment. How could that prevent the meeting from proceeding? If you kept talking while sitting there, how can the meeting proceed on this basis? Before I put the question to you, I want to remind you, according to Rule 49B2A, if the motion moved by Mr. Chen Chi-chen is passed, then there will be no further action taken on that motion to censure the concerned member. If Mr. Chen Chi-chen's motion is negatived, then the matter will be referred to an investigation committee. And I'll put the question, and that is that the motion moved by Mr. Chen Chi-chen in accordance with Rule 49B bracket 2A be passed. Mr. Chen Chi-chen claims a division. The bell will ring for 5 minutes.
開始表決。
Please proceed to vote. Please verify your vote. If there's no question, voting is now closed and the result is displayed. FC members 32 present, 10 for, 21 against. GC members 32 present, 16 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members. I declare the motion negative. As the motion is negative in accordance with Rule 49B bracket 2A, the debate on this censure motion comes to a close, and the relevant matters will be referred to an investigation committee. The fourth motion, Mr.